So I'm sure there'll be a couple of surprises on these next upcoming seasons.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It's always I'm looking forward actually to seeing how some of these tough live guys do. Good news actually, James Vick's just come online, so I think we might be able to get him on. I think he's obviously come online for the interview. I think
Oh,
that's an
fantastic!
added bonus. Just before I'll just message him to see if he's good to go. But I've just read a headline that Leo Machida has hinted that Glover Teixeira is going to be fighting Vanderlei Silva.
Oh my,
That's a he's hinting at that, so that's interesting. All right,
yeah, that is
I'll just send James a message and see if he's good to go, and then we'll
fantastic.
go from there. So hopefully he is.
Yeah,
That'd be a bit of a. It would be good to get him on after the other two guests have fallen through. So it'd be nice to get James on and then see how
yeah,
that works
certainly.
out. Because he
Yeah,
was a standout contestant on Tough Live as well, really, wasn't he? He got to the last four in the end.
yeah, he did. He had a good. He went 3-1 overall in the Ultimate Fighter. So definitely a good showing, and hopefully we'll get to see him make his UFC debut soon enough.
Yeah, and I mean, his first, not his fight to get into the house, but his first fight once he was in the house as well. I mean, he was picked to lose basically. They fed him to Darren Cruikshank to lose, and then of course he shocked everyone with his knee, didn't he?
Yeah, he certainly did, and
Right. What I'll do is I'll try
yeah,
and ring him, and I'll see if we'll see if he answers because he's not replying to
fantastic.
me. Oh yeah, he's replied. Yes, sir. He's good to go. Brilliant. Right, that's a bonus. Let's get him on.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's just ringing James now. Hello, James.
Hello.
Hi, you okay?
Yes, sir.
Just to let you know, you're on with myself, Ray, and my co-host Patrick.
Hey, good afternoon, Good afternoon, James.
I'm good. How are you?
Hey, we're doing wonderful. Thanks for coming on.
No problem.
Right, we'll jump straight in then, James. Obviously, we first got to see you on the mainstream when you were on Ultimate Fighter, but before Ultimate Fighter, you had fought four times in 2011. So just to get a little bit of your background, could you tell us what your record was going into Ultimate Fighter and kind of how you'd won your fights?
Well, I was 4-0. I had three finishes and one decision, two submissions and one knockout.
And did you out of your four fights and obviously your three finishes, which was obviously impressive going in, did you have a favourite fight or a favourite win?
Before the house,
Yeah, before the
or
house.
yeah, I had fought in South Texas in a town called McLean, and then I fought at 170 actually, and I knocked the guy out with one punch,
Was that
and that
the
was
Mike Salazar?
yes, yeah, that was my probably my favorite knockout, before the Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. And then obviously we then saw you on the Ultimate Fighter, and you won your fight to get into the house. And I think it's fair to say when you were picked for the first fight in the house, and they picked you because they thought you would be an easy win for Cruikshank, and that obviously wasn't the case. So can you tell us how you felt going into that fight, and obviously then how that fight played out?
Well, I felt like, definitely they picked me like I was a weak link, and it kind of upset me, it made me mad that they thought that, they had to, in my mind, I was like, they got to be dumb, thinking that. And I remember they kept interviewing, interviewing this, the Ultimate Fighter cast and all the workers there and everything, and they kept saying, "How do you feel about being the underdog?" And how does it? And I remember telling them, I was like, "Who's the underdog?" In my mind, I'm always the favorite. If I thought I was going to lose, I wouldn't be fighting. So I, I told them, I'm going to win, and no one believed me. And then it came up, and I just think that Cruikshank didn't take me seriously. And then, you know, as we got in there, I think that a lot of people I heard, I guess, were trying to say he was beating me up real bad before I caught him with the knee, and I was, after watching the fight, I was like, you kidding me? It's just we were in a filling out process, and he was having a problem getting in my range, and then he was moving a lot, so I was trying to be patient, and then know he started getting all wild, and he's throwing spinning back fists, spinning kicks, and everything. And then we had a good game plan. I was gonna get him backing up, and I was gonna throw a high kick since he stands in the southpaw stance. I was gonna throw a right high kick, and as I started to throw it, I seen him shoot in, and then I didn't bring the kick up. I just left it as a knee, and then hit him right on the chin with the knee.
Was you surprised he went out the way he did?
I was surprised. It kind of scared me, honestly. I seen his neck moving like three different directions, and I mean, I've never knocked anyone out that bad. It scared me.
It was a hell of a knee, and it just landed flush, didn't it? I mean, I remember watching the fight, and I was off my seat when it happened because it was so unexpected. And we'd been told watching it, we'd been told that Cruikshank's going to win this fight. That's basically what they told us watching it. With the way they built it up, and then when you threw that knee, it kind of set the standard, I think, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that once we got control, I think that we had a chance to really run the table on the picks, but I think maybe our picks weren't necessarily as good as they could have been. But I mean, it definitely gave us momentum going in. And I remember in the house after Justin Lawrence beat Cristiano Marcelo. Honestly, we could kind of see their morale going down on their whole team. Thinking that we were about to beat them.
Yeah, because you got off to quite a good start, and then obviously you moved on to the quarter final, and you got another tough fight because you obviously fought Joe Proctor, and he trained with Joe Lozon, and there was again quite a bit of hype on Joe Proctor as well. So how did you feel going into that fight, and was you happy with the way that fight played out?
Yeah, I knew in my mind, to me, I figured that was going to be a really good fight for me because I felt like Joe Proctor was tailor made for my style. That he's a slower, flat-footed jiu-jitsu guy who stands in front of you. I mean, he's a very well-rounded fighter and very good, but I felt like I was more athletic and I moved too much. And I knew that his jiu-jitsu is good, but he's not a wrestler. He doesn't have a wrestling base first. He's a good wrestler, but not he hasn't been wrestling his whole life. So I knew that he was really going to have a problem getting me down, and I knew that my hands were faster, my feet were faster, and I was just my range and athleticism was going to be too much for him.
Yeah, and obviously that, like you say, it was always going to be if you could keep the fight standing, he was going to struggle, and he couldn't get close enough to you to take you down. Your takedown defense was too good, and he just couldn't deal with your range, could he?
No, and I felt like it's I jab a lot too, and a lot of people it's definitely the most underused weapon in MMA, and as I'm jabbing, people when you're sparring or practicing, people will walk through your jab with the bigger gloves. People don't walk through jabs in MMA because the gloves are too small, So I knew that my jab was going to be able to keep them off, and with my power punching, when I did set my feet, I knew it was going to hurt him, and I was actually surprised that he took as many good hits as he did.
Yeah, it's fair to say he's a tough guy, and I think he's shown that in that fight in defeat as well. I mean, obviously you're 25. This was it's fair to say was a huge break for you. How did it come about that you were on the Ultimate Fighter?
Well, I've been a fan of the Ultimate Fighter since I was, since the first season, and I remember always saying to myself, oh, I want to try out for that. I think I could make it. And then, we seen me and my coach back home, Derwin Lamb. We seen on the internet, he had told me, hey, the tryouts are December the 5th, of this year. If you want to go, then let's go. And we decided to go, and he went with me, and then we just went to open tryouts, and I knew in my mind that if I made it past the grappling round, I just knew that I was going to be on that show because I knew that I felt like my personality was good enough. I was going to get there, and I felt like me being 6'3" at 155, that they were going to take a chance with me regardless if I did good in the grappling round, and I ended up actually doing pretty good in the grappling round, and then moved on and I to the second round, which was hitting pads, and I brought my own coach, so I was hitting pads with someone I was more comfortable with, whereas a lot of the guys just used the UFC guys that were there. So I felt like I had a big edge, and then I pretty much after the grappling round, I handled all the other rounds and the challenges pretty easily, and I just knew that I was going to make it after I left on December the 5th.
How would you how would you rate the experience of being involved with, obviously, one, being involved with the Ultimate Fighter, and two, being involved with their first live season?
It was great. A lot of people would say, "Oh, this is miserable. I would never do this again." I would do it again in a heartbeat. I wish that, I wish I could do that once a year. It was horrible. Being away from home and no contact and no music, no internet, no TV, nothing like that. But it was the greatest experience in my life. 3 months of training with coaches. Some of the best coaches in the world, and just getting to train full time because before that I'd always worked full time and never got to practice full time. And I loved it. It was hard, but it was definitely the best experience of my life.
And have you had any contact with the UFC? What's happening with you next? Have they talked about a fight for you in the UFC?
Yeah, Joe. Right now I'm healing up some small injuries. After the Ultimate Fighter, or during the, right, I talked to Joe Silva in the finale, and he said, he gave me his card and told me, go home, heal up. I have a few injuries. Heal up. He goes, I understand that a lot of these guys, are beat up after this process. It's such a grueling thing, and plus, we were in camp for so long, for 3 months, and he said, just heal up, take as much time as you need, and we'll and call me when you're ready, and we'll book you a fight. And then, the next month I got sent to the Fighter Summit. We did all the classes and all that, and then right now I'm just healing up. I'm still training pretty hard as I can, but I'm healing up small injuries, and I'm gonna let everybody know when I got a fight scheduled.
Brilliant. Well, we'll certainly look forward to seeing you. Look forward to seeing you fight because you did make an impact in the house. I was gonna. We've had quite a few guys on from Tough Live, which has been brilliant. And there's one question I always ask them, and I'm going to ask you the same question. There was obviously one real controversial moment in the house, or one real controversial moment we got to see, which was the incident between Darren Cruikshank and Chris Tickle. Did you see the incident, or what was your take on the incident?
Yes, I've seen it. I thought it was, I thought Cruikshank, Tickle was playing a prank, which I ain't gonna lie, I would have got mad about it too. But at the same time, I don't play pranks like that all the time. Cruikshank plays more pranks than anybody in the house, but then gets mad when Tickle does it. I mean, you can't sit there and antagonize someone every day, and then when they do it back, you get mad. That's just life. If you're gonna play those pranks like that, then you need to be able to take them as well.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. If you can't take it, then don't give it. I know Patrick's eager to talk to you, so I'll let Patrick jump in. You good to go, Patrick? All right, just wait for him to come back. So, have you got any timescale to think on when you'll be ready to fight, or what kind of injuries are healing? Have you got healing?
Well, better not talk about my injuries, but I'm gonna try to fight sometime early next year. Would be good from, or like maybe end of January or February, depending on also what my coach thinks too. I'm training full time with Team Lloyd Irvin now, and then he kind of wants me to wait, and then we got to, like I said, I have, injuries. I really can't rush these injuries, so I gotta just deal with it for right now.
And obviously, sometimes when you see guys on the Ultimate Fighter, they go on the Ultimate Fighter at a certain weight class because that's what's available. But then they sometimes they change weight classes. Are you going to be staying at 155, or will you be going to a different weight class?
I'm going to stay at 155 as long as my body will allow me to. There's no way I can make 45. That's pretty much impossible. But maybe one day I might have to move to 170 because I am a big guy. I'm 6'3", and I walk around between, close to 180. Between 75 and 80. But I'm for sure within the next few years, next 3 years or so, I should definitely be able to stay at 55, no problem.
Yeah, I think it's great with your height and reach advantage at 155 as well. You can really use it, especially with the way you with your style of fighting with your striking. I think it's a real advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was one of the more inexperienced guys in the house, and I really believe they took a chance with me, even to get in the house, just because I was so, just because I was so tall, and I'm a striker, so they knew that I wasn't going to be a boring fighter. And then, I'm so tall that I think that they see me as a guy they could really, make a better fighter and have a good career in the UFC. As
Yeah.
far as a lot of the guys, I think they just bring them in, and don't really care about them.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think that showed in your fight with Cruikshank as well. I know Patrick's eager to jump in, so let Patrick take over now. You good to go, Patrick?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ray, and thanks again for coming on, James. Um, I was doing a little research, and you're a multiple-time Gold Glove winner. Is that correct in boxing?
Yes, two-time Golden Glove champion in boxing.
There you go. Now, what brought about the transition to MMA? Was that something like were you training boxing at the same time as MMA, or did boxing come first?
Boxing came first, but like people, I think they don't realize it. They think I've been boxing my whole life, but I really have only been boxing for 4.5 years. I've really only been training MMA for probably 2 years. I started. I wanted to get into MMA, and I started in 2007. I started boxing because it was the only thing in the town I was living in a town called Weatherford, Texas, and it was the only. I was looking around for schools, and the only thing I found was a boxing gym, so I just started doing it, and I fell in love with boxing, and then from there I moved to a different town and stayed with my brother, and there was a jiu-jitsu school there, so I started jiu-jitsu there. So then, I boxed for about 2 years straight before I did anything else. But then, also I've had, two surgeries on my shoulder and my hand. So I've really only been training for a little over 4 years, uh, total training time. And that includes boxing. I think people, misunderstand and think that I've been boxing my whole life. I had 20 amateur fights, but I took all my fights in a year and a half. So I fought, 20 amateur fights basically in a year and a half time period.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, and I know your professional MMA record. You started off with an equally quick tear, like you and Ray talked about. You started off 4-0, and you looked real good in all the fights I could find online. A lot of quick finishes, a lot of good fights. Um, and like you alluded to, you're a tall 155, and you got a good mix of submissions and knockouts on your record. Do you look for one, or do you prefer one or the other in your fight, or whatever gets you the W?
I definitely prefer the knockout. I mean that's pretty much most people's ideal finish is a knockout. But surprisingly, like in boxing, I didn't have many finishes in amateur boxing because I wasn't really technical. I'm starting to learn how to set my feet more in terms of like before I used to just punch a lot with my arms and not using my body and not shifting my weight right. And now that I'm learning how to set down my punches better and my kicks, then I'm learning how to finish people better. So in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really learned how to to become more powerful with my strikes.
Yeah, well, it's definitely shown in your fights. Now you said you got into boxing when that was pretty much the only thing you could find in your area. But it seems like MMA is definitely growing in Texas. What is the scene like down there right now?
It's get MMA is really good right now in Texas. Especially Dallas Fort Worth area. There's starting to be a lot of really good fighters, and there's people are opening up new schools there, and there's starting to be just the schools are starting to grow. The schools are going from 5 fighters all the way to 20 fighters within a year. And you're starting to see more and more people getting more serious about it. But still, it's still behind other places, I think, a little bit. And I'm actually not even training in Texas right now. I'm in Maryland at Lloyd Irving's camp. But
Oh, there you go.
yeah, for sure. I'm joining Team Lloyd Irving. This is from my experience with him on the show. He was the best coach I've ever seen in my life, and he told me I was welcome to come up here and stay. So I packed my stuff up and pretty much moved up here.
Wow, fantastic. Well, that answers my next question. Have you been to any other camps besides Lloyd Irvin's after your time on Tough?
No, I probably could have went to almost any camp I wanted to after the show. Um, uh, Team Lloyd Irvin's also affiliated with Alliance, and I was gonna go out there, but then I decided, that I really wanted to, train with Master Lloyd. He's, probably one of the best coaches I've ever met, and he's an expert at what I need the most is my ground game. And I feel like with him and all his knowledge is really going to be help me become a world champion. He's going to show me how to use my body type for and my for my skill set. And I really felt like it was a great fit for me. And and he gave me the invitation, so I decided to back up and come up here.
Ah, that's excellent. So are there any other fighters you're training with up there, or maybe any guys on the local circuit we should be watching out for?
Mike Easton is up here, and
Okay.
there's a guy that's on this season. I can't really talk about that, or I don't really know the details on that. But on the season Ultimate Fighter, Frank Camacho, he's also here. And there's a
Okay.
few other guys here. There's one guy that's fought, a couple guys that fought for Strike Force and Bellator that train here. And then Master Little send us periodically to Alliance to Dominic Cruz's camp also for a couple weeks at a time.
Very cool. Very cool. Um, let's see. Now you had talked with Ray. You're healing up a little bit, and hopefully we'll see you in the octagon early next year. Is there any opponent you got your eye on? Any particular fight you want to take, or?
Well, I mean, I would love a rematch with Kiesa. I'm not gonna lie, but I'm sure that's not gonna happen anytime soon. You know, that's probably a fight that I want to have to win 3 or 4 fights to get a rematch with him. But it really doesn't matter. I mean, whoever the UFC pairs me up with, I'm pretty much gonna fight them. So just whoever as of right now.
All right, I see. And I know we had Darren Cruikshank on recently, and he had talked a little bit about potentially doing a rematch. You have any interest in doing that? Could you see that being your first fight come back?
Well, he's already got a fight booked actually. It's if UFC pairs me up with him, I'm not afraid of nobody. I'll fight whoever they pair me up with. I mean, I understand him wanting the rematch because I mean I want a rematch with Chiesa also. So I mean I'm not opposed to anything. Whatever the UFC says, they want me to fight him, Chiesa, Proctor, any of those guys. But